Villa Orchid Cap Ferrat, France. August 1951. Narrated by Louis de Fry, notary. There are places where people don't come for the sun, the sea or the wine. There are places where they come to disappear. Villa Orchid on Cap Ferrat was just such a place. An old house on a hill, surrounded by a thicket of palms, bougainvillea and pines, with half-century-old shutters that were never fully closed, and a garden where no one let the gardeners in. I had known this villa for a long time because it was I, a notary from Nice, who had been trusted by its previous owners when they needed to draw up documents for a purchase or a will. But in that August of 51st year, I did not come there for work. I came because I had received a strange letter. There was no signature or address on it. Only a neat text on thin paper: Monsieur de Fry, please arrive at Villa Orchid on August 14th at noon. There will be a reading of Madame Violette Darlan's will. Your services as notary will be required. I believe you'll find it of interest. Violette Darlan. A name I haven't heard in over 10 years. A woman I once loved. And who disappeared one of those evenings when the war was over, but no one yet realized that another had begun, cold, quiet, without shots. August 14th. I arrived at Villa Orchidea at 11:50. The air was thick, hot, with the smell of dried herbs, eucalyptus and something sweet, almost cloying, like overripe peaches. There were 3 cars in front of the house. The first was a dark blue Delayer. I recognized it. It was Dr. Mathieu, an old friend of Violette's. The second was a black Rover with Parisian license plates. I later learned that Paul Darlan, her nephew, had arrived. The third was a silver Lancia. It belonged to Gabriela Arduin, a well-known antiques collector and Violette's longtime business partner. I walked up the alley, past old stone vases with withered orchids in them. The door was open. I was greeted by a young woman in her 30s, wearing a strict black dress and short dark hair. "Are you the notary de Fry?" she asked in a soft southern accent. I nodded. "I am Isabel. I have been Madame Darlan's companion for the past 4 years. Please come into the salon." The salon. The same one where I had first kissed Violetta, back in the 42nd century. A room with high windows, heavy curtains and Second Empire-style furniture. All 3 were already sitting there. Mathieu, grey-haired and neat, nodded a greeting to me. Paul, tall, thin, with a sharp nose, was looking out the window. Gabriel, in an immaculate light-colored suit, smiled his usual easy smile, like a man who always knows more than the others. Isabel laid out the papers in front of me. The will, written in Violetta's neat handwriting, was short and clear: all movable and immovable property including Villa Orchidea to be given to the person who first utters the phrase, "I knew Violetta's secret." I read it aloud. There was silence in the room. Then Gabriel spoke first. "I knew Violetta's secret." He said it evenly, calmly, without a shadow of doubt. I looked at him and realized that he had been preparing that phrase for years. Isabel nodded and unfolded another sheet of paper. There was a text written by Violetta herself: "Whoever said those words must tell what he knew. If he lied, the property would go to the next person who told me my secret." Gabriel grinned and spoke. Violetta wasn't just the owner of galleries and vineyards. She worked for intelligence, both French and British. During the war, she passed information from Vichy, then from London. That's why she disappeared in the 45th. Her death was staged. She went underground to avoid being a target. I helped her hide. And yes, I knew it all along. Paul Darlan rose from his seat. His face had gone pale. "Lies," he said sharply. "Violetta was my aunt. I knew more than you. She didn't die in the 45th. She returned to France under another name. I helped her recover her possessions. And yes, she was an agent, but she wasn't British. She worked for the Americans. And that's why there will only appeared now, when the game was over." I shifted my gaze to Dr. Mathieu. He sat still, his eyes downcast. And then he said quietly, "They are both wrong." He raised his head, and for the first time I saw in his gaze the weariness of his years. I knew Violetta better than anyone. Because I loved her like no one else. She didn't work for intelligence. She worked only for herself. She played both sides, not for ideals, but for survival. I helped her because I believed that one day we could leave together. But she chose differently. She chose Villa Orchid, as a last refuge where she could die in peace. Isabel looked at me. I realized I had a conclusion to draw. All three had told the truth. And all three were only part of the truth. I opened the last envelope. In it was a photograph, faded, old. Violetta was in it. And a fourth person. I. Done in Lisbon in '44. And on the back is an inscription in her handwriting: "My heart belongs to the one who knew everything. Louis." I slowly placed the photo on the table. Isabel smiled. "So the property is yours, Monsieur de Frey. You knew everything." I nodded silently. Because I knew it was her last game. And her last goodbye. A week later, I sold Villa Orchid. I went to Italy and then to Argentina. And every time I heard the smell of overripe peaches or saw orchids in an abandoned garden, I remembered Violetta. A woman who always knew how to disappear, even from her own life. And who had left me not a possession, but the hardest inheritance of all, memory.